rolling. Good to see you all today. I've got an interesting thing to talk to you about. And it comes from a personal moment this week that I'll chat with you about. But broken promises. I want to talk about that. The Bible talks a lot about promises and things like that, and I want to talk about promises. Some that are fulfilled, some that aren't. And what do you do with them when they're not? There's some neat things in the Bible about it, and like I said, my story is kind of middle of the road. Broken promises can be anything from things very, very light to very, very serious and hurtful. And so I'm going to start with a personal story, kind of middle of the road, and then I'll play with it from there. Good, this looks like a great group to chat with this morning. So, got a couple of songs, and then I'm going to pick your brain about that. So, opening song, some of you know this very well, Sing It Up Big and Proud. It's called Soon and Very Soon. And the nice thing about this tune, even if you don't know it, you don't pick it up quick. It's very, it's a sing-along, repetitive sort of thing. So here we go. It goes like this. Soon and very soon, we are going to see the King. Soon and very soon, we are going to see the King. Soon and very soon, we are going to see the King. Hallelujah, hallelujah, we're going to see. No more dying there, no more dying there. We are going to see the King. No more dying there, we are going to see the King. No more dying there, we are going to see the King. Hallelujah, hallelujah, we're going to see the King. No more crying there, we are going to see the King. No more crying there, we are going to see the King. No more crying there, we are going to see the King. Hallelujah, hallelujah, we're going to see the King. Amen. All right, good to see you. I'm going to chat with you for a minute about stuff going on, prayers we need to lift up, things of that nature. So, if I forget anything, let me know. There's been a bit going on these days, so I want to chat with you a bit about that. Let's see. I'd like to keep in our prayers this week our own Jane, who has been in the hospital this week and kind of came home suddenly. So we're keeping her in our prayers and hope she recovers well. She wants to join us next week, come down for a bit of a visit, so things like that. Let's see. Also keeping Patty in our prayers. She is trying to plan for another knee replacement surgery. And so that has been, it's one of those coming along. She talked a little bit about last week and still sort of getting along. There's been some wonderful medical insurance issues with that. I love that. It's about a certain doctor, hospital system that all of a sudden said, well, that's nice, we think you should get this, but we're not going to, your medical insurance, we won't cover your medical insurance. And that's it. Yeah, that's the joy of, so she's been playing a lot with that and changing some doctoring too. So let's keep her in our prayers. That's not only is, she did really well in her last knee surgery, but it's a lot to it, a lot of recovery, and add to the stress of medical insurance stuff. And
yeah, she's going to start from the beginning with all
with the whole new system.
Yes,
yep.
I have to have it all like redone.
Yep. So let's definitely keep her in our prayers, because not only is that a lot of work, but a royal pain.
And it's waiting.
Yeah, and a lot of waiting.
While you're in pain.
Yep, while you're in pain, waiting. Now pray up and wait. So, excellent. All right, other prayers we want to keep. Dave, are you going to make it there? You kind of walked in here a little sore this morning. Are you going to...
Oh, that's fine.
I just love the teeth.
I don't sit still.
No. It's
Once I move, then it's okay.
I understand. I know the walk.
I blamed it on the Chaz.
It's completely Chaz's fault. It's okay. It's all right. I used to be a runner for 8 years, high school and college, and so I know the feeling when you take some time off and then you start up again. It's those muscles that have. Oh, I recognize the walk. That was.
I would like prayer for my son Jason. He's officially in Poland now, stationed there for 9 months in the National Guard.
Yep, we were talking a little bit about for Jason in the National Guard in Poland for 9 months, and so he's there and on duty.
He can say it.
Is he at the Russian border too?
Yeah.
Yeah, my neighbor's son is in the guards, and he just likes it.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
And he's stationed, he just got sent to Poland. She said to guard the border.
You can't tell us anything.
Yeah, I'm sure that's, you know.
They don't want you to tell anything.
He doesn't talk much anyway, so it's not hard for
It doesn't make it any easier on the family.
Well, I know what he's saying, because every once in a while I see, he makes a comment on Facebook.
Yeah, I don't put a, he'll post
Yeah.
something.
I'd like to add my dad
Yeah.
to, he's having a rough transition. He's had Alzheimer's. He's had Alzheimer's for quite a while, and his wife has been taking care of him. And he's currently transitioning into waiting for a VA hospital bed, a VA nursing home in Mexico, Missouri, to spend the rest of his days and shoot the stories with the other old soldiers and everything, which I think will make him very happy.
Yeah, that should help.
But we're waiting for a bed to open up, and looking forward to this burden not being on my stepmom anymore, because she.
And are they still having trouble with the pandemic there?
She claims that she doesn't know anybody who's currently having a resurgence, but they are right in the hot spot. They are in southwest Missouri.
Yeah.
Around the Springfield, Branson, Ozarks area. So, and I can't get a straight answer from her if they've got their vaccines.
Why is that?
Because they changed the topic when you bring it up?
Yes, they changed the
I would
topic.
take that as a no.
I'm taking that as a no.
Also, some good news anyway, speaking of parents and stuff. I saw my mom this week, and I know there have been over the last year's restrictions about visiting and stuff. And she's doing oddly well over there. My new job is right around the corner from where she lives. And it seems to have adjusted really well to her new room and new spot and all that. So I'm really
Is it still restricted visiting there?
less restricted. You got to go through, now it's not so much restricted as you got to go through more rigmarole. So I have to go in there, take a little device that takes my temperature, answer a bunch of questions on a sheet of paper, put a mask on, but then I can go in and, so it's not so much restrictive visiting as it's more bureaucratic, or more paperwork, I guess you could say, yeah. But no, I can pretty much go in there now, whenever, so that's pretty good. And that's fairly recent.
She did send condolences.
Yes, she did. She's
Yeah.
on the old Facebook channel, so which is another way I, when in doubt, Mom will.
She hasn't been on there for a while, but.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, and she seems more. When you go to see the room, it's more settled in and more hers, I guess. You get that feeling.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That's good.
yeah, it was an encouraging visit. I've been kind of worried about her over the last year, being less able to visit her because of the whole
Yeah.
yeah.
Is her memory doing okay right now?
Yeah, not bad.
Good.
Not bad. Memory is.
Because you said that wasn't the best.
Well, it was, with her, everything was connected to her depression.
Okay.
So in other words, her mental capacity, when depression kicks in, it all kind of goes out the window. When it's under control, she's taking the right meds, it's actually doing really well now. So,
And then make sure she takes it.
well, that's the joy of, make sure you take the meds in a timely manner. Yes, yes. Very kind, but thou shalt be taking this pill now. Which, as her son, I was less able to.
You did say that?
What's that?
Did you have a harder time convincing her of taking it?
No. Mom never argued. Matter of fact, there's a Bible story today we'll be talking about. Someone says, "Oh yes, I'll get right to it." It never does it. It's Mom with her medication. Oh yeah, I took care of that. It was all good. And it's like, and eventually from the symptoms, you have
As soon as eventually, oh sure, I ate. Nope. Sure, I drank a bottle of water. No, you didn't.
Yeah, so it was a lot of that. It wasn't a lot of arguing. It was a lot of what do you call that? Passive aggressive. Kind of oh, I'm sure I'll take care of that, and then it doesn't get done. And the nice thing is nurses, they got paperwork. They check. They know if you,
They sit there and watch you.
Oh yeah, they know what they're doing, and that's wonderful. They got a great staff there. So. All right. Well, let's pray. No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in. Anything else we would like to lift up in our prayers today? Dear God, we come to you this morning and we thank you so much that we can be together. Thank you for this beautiful day. we want to lift up some of our own family here that is not here today. Hopefully they're okay. And those in our midst that we worry about. Let's keep Jason in our prayers. And like to keep Papadopoulos in our prayers. But dear God, for those that we have raised and for those that we have not, we want to reach out with your love and care and teach us how to be your ambassadors of love so that they know they're not alone. In Jesus' name, we lift up these and so many more of our heartfelt prayers to you. Amen. Who's next? Oh goodness, I almost forgot. Odd questions from the internet. Now this is where Cassie, well, sometimes telling me, sometimes not telling me, scours the internet and finds odd religious questions, brings them to us, and we get to answer them right here using our brilliant minds. So, fire away.
I'm a Christian, you're a Christian, we family. You need me to pray with you? I got you. You need me to fast with you? I got you. You need me to believe God in a situation for you? I got you. You need me to go down to the block with you so we can... No? But Peter chopped off the guy. I'll turn the other cheek with you. I got you, fam.
So, the question coming out of this, sweetie.
What did Peter cut off?
So, out of nowhere, Cassie came to me yesterday. Excuse me, was Peter ever violent?
Yeah.
And was this
Wasn't
good?
he in prison?
I don't remember stories of violence.
Paul spent a lot of time in prison. Paul spent a lot of time in prison. No, it's quite all right. Because honestly, given certain different circumstances, he would have ended up there anyway. And no, both of the.
He was, I can't.
Yeah, and I think Peter actually spent some time in Huzgau as well. But Paul is famous for that because he wrote a number of letters from prison to the churches, which is why his prison time is a little more famous than the last. But yes, what's very interesting about all the early apostles is most of them ended up in trouble with the law at some point or another because of their faith. But the question was much more direct because she was talking about that. Well, yeah, if you need me to, and Peter, and was he directly violent? And the answer is yes. And the question, and so the question comes up about, well, what does that mean in our faith? So when was Peter particularly violent, or the most violent episode that you could think of involving Peter?
The garden. Chopping off the ear.
Bingo! Chopping off the ear. It's a good one. So when they come to arrest Jesus, there's a number of soldiers involved in there. He is a servant of the high priest. We don't know exactly what his job is. We just know him as servant of the high priest. But he's there in the crowd to arrest Jesus. Peter becomes so upset at the moment. Now, there's some different details in the way it's told. Remember, especially Jesus' arrest, death on the cross stories are recorded in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John for everybody. And so there's some different details that you'd expect. But essentially, Peter gets so angry that he takes his sword out and slashes at, and it cuts off his ear. In one of the stories, Jesus actually heals it, and other times he just says, this is not a time for violence, and Jesus goes with them quietly. But for all of these, and I think it's an important lesson, even our saintly heroes of the Bible have very human moments where they are less than perfect. And lucky thing for Peter at that moment was that Jesus was there to tell him what he was doing wrong. Not in time for the poor guy's ear, but basically before anything worse happened. So what was her point in all of that now with Peter's?
Well, she was talking about how she was going to have her Christian family's back.
Yes.
Even if it meant going down the street and busting some heads.
Yeah.
And
that's so like yeah.
Yeah.
And well, Peter did. Yes, exactly. So.
And if you need me to go down the block, I'll turn the other cheek with you.
Yeah. But there is the conundrum of the modern Christian, of course,
Yeah.
because there are times when we are expected to, quote, turn the other cheek, and what does that mean? But there are times when Jesus saw something very bad and became angry, and even violent in one case. When Jesus goes to the temple, the great temple, and sees, essentially, now to make a very long story short, them turning the business, them turning the act of sacrifices into a business, essentially. It comes from older traditions where almost everyone was a farmer in the Old Testament. You gave up, you sacrificed certain animals to God. And so you actually burn them, smoke goes up to heaven, and God gets that. Now there was a tradition in the Great Temple of, I believe you had to buy a pigeon or something like that if you were a city folk, you know, and so, but there was purchasing and things like that. There's reports that many churches / synagogues over the years have used various religious things to make a lot of money. And so Jesus sees them as really corrupt. And so he goes in there, sees what's going on, and now according to certain stories, Matthew, Mark, and Luke chases them out, says, "You've turned my Father's house into a den of robbers," and things like that. But in the Gospel of John, he actually fashions a whip and snaps it at them until they leave. It is one of the most angry moments that probably the most angry moment he has in the Bible. It is, there's no mincing words. He sees something that so bothers him that he's not going to just vainly talk about it or turn the other cheek. It is a moment where things have got to change. So these things come into play as Christians when we see things we don't like in the world. How do you react to it? Do you pray for them? Do you turn the other cheek? Do you do something very strong as a protest? And different Christians at different times have had to answer that question for their circumstances. Is this a "I'll pray for you" moment? Is this a "I'll forgive you" moment? Is this a "I'm going to fashion a whip out of a cord of rope and chase your rear end out of here" moment? And that's always been the million-dollar question when Christians look at their situations and then look to the Bible for inspiration, because honestly, there are times when Jesus and Peter could be incredibly loving and calm. There were other times when Peter gets so angry that he takes a sword and chops off the servant of the high priest here, which Jesus actually tells him is the wrong thing to do after the ear. But in one of the accounts, he actually heals the ear. So any other questions you had when you picked our internet question of the week? I'm kind of curious.
No, I just thought it was a great little clip, and I had no idea. I didn't remember the story.
She's got us, even if it means busting heads downtown.
Exactly.
Whatever that means. But that's, at the end of the day, there's the million-dollar question as a Christian. If something's going on wrong, do you act like Jesus and pray for him, which he did when things were going wrong? Or do you act like Jesus and make a whip and chase him out of the building? And that's something we all have to wrestle with. And apparently she's wrestling with it as well. Thoughts, questions, last things on this before we move on here. All right. Okay, now I love to have one song that's a little more modern, or at least a little more peppy or whatever, but this is an old hymn, old classic, and I like to put one of them in there, and it's about promises, and it's one of those songs that stood the test of time. So I'm going to grab my guitar, we'll sing it together, and so if you remember singing along well, and it's another one you'll pick up pretty quickly. If you don't, Did I find a pick over here?
You were playing with
Thank
it.
you. I was playing with it the whole time. I don't know why. It fits right in that little spot in the crack there. And I tend to,
It's perfect.
It's come by a little. All right, let's take it. Here we go. Oh, Jesus, I have promised to serve you till the end. Remain forever near me, my Savior and my friend. I shall not fear life's struggles if you are by my side. Nor wander through the pathways, you will be my guide. Oh, let me hear you speaking, and accents clear and still. All the storms of passion, murmurs of self-will. Oh, speak to reassure me, to hasten all control. Oh, speak and make me listen, oh, guardian of my soul. We always have a time in every service to talk about past mistakes and forgiveness. It's a core piece. The truth is, we strive for things above us. We strive for things that we cannot always reach. And our Bible reminds us over and over again that we have been forgiven by God. And, it's not a good news, bad news thing, we are asked to forgive others. And that can be truly challenging sometimes. It's a wonderful quote here. Forgiveness is a promise, not a feeling. When you forgive other people, you are making a promise not to use their past sin against them. Keep that in mind. Let us pray. Oh God, we come to you this morning, and we are sorry for the mistakes we have made. Help us to become better people, and help us to forgive those who have hurt us. And let us continue our prayers in silence. Brothers and sisters, hear the good news. Wonderful quote from the Gospel of Luke. So watch yourselves. If your brother or sister sins against you, rebuke them. But if they repent, forgive them. Remember, we have been given new lives and been asked to reach out in love and care to one another. For we all find ourselves sometimes on the side where we're wrong and need forgiveness. I think I can make it now, the pain is gone. All of those bad feelings have disappeared. Here's the rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. Sunshiny day. Alright, so a couple of readings. First one's real quick and simple. The other one I really want to play with a bit. Skipped something new, my apologies. And as children of God together, let us pray the prayer that Jesus taught to us. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Reading from Ecclesiastes. It is better not to make a promise at all than to make one and not keep it. And I want to play with you a song. This is, it's still an old tune, but very peppy and done in many different contexts. We'll understand it better by and by. We are tossed and driven on the restless time. Somber skies, howling tempests, off 16, bright sunshine. In that land of perfect day, where the mists have rolled away, we will understand it better by and by. By and by, when the morning comes, and all the saints of God gathered home, we'll tell the story of overcome. For we'll understand it better by and by. We are often destitute of the things that life demands. Want shelter or food, thirsty hills and barren land. We are trusting in the Lord, and according to His word, we will understand it better by and by. By and by, when the morning comes, and all the saints of God gathered home, we'll tell the story of overcome. Oh, we'll understand it better by and by. Trials dug on every hand, and we cannot understand all the ways that God will lead us to that blessed promised land. His guides us with his eye and will follow till we die. Oh, we'll understand it better by and by. By and by, when the morning comes, and all the saints of God are gathered home, we'll tell the story how we've overcome. Oh, we'll understand it better by and by. We will understand it better by and by. All right, I got a story to share with you this morning. An interesting Bible story. It is a parable that we almost never talk about. And I have obviously been a part of church for years. I never remember a preacher preaching about this. It's one of those forgotten little parables. So I want to share with you because it includes a promise in it. And I want to eventually get your thoughts and feelings on promises. The ones that worked out great and the ones that were broken. And I want to talk about that with you a bit. But let's see. This comes from Gospel of Matthew. Jesus said, I will tell you a story about a man who had 2 sons. And then you can tell me what you think. The father went to the older son and said, go work in my vineyard today. And the son told him that he wouldn't do it. But later he changed his mind, and he went. And the man then told his younger son to go work in the vineyard. And the boy said he would, but he didn't go. Now which one of these sons obeyed the father? The older one, the chief priests and the leaders answered. And Jesus told them, you can be sure that the tax collectors and prostitutes will get into the kingdom of God before you ever will. When John the Baptist showed you how to do what was right, you did not believe him. But these evil people did believe. And even when you saw what they did, you still would not change your minds and believe. Jesus' point here is interesting. He's making a comment that he did a number of different ways. He's pointing out that the people truly touched by God would surprise you, and that the people who were religious in his day were often the ones who could be the meanest. And the people who you think would be the meanest turned out to be some of the most kindest, loving people who, to paraphrase Jesus, who got it, who understood. The story is very interesting. The story of a man, and most people have been there, especially around Jesus' day, but certainly that does not stop there. Goes to his oldest son. Excuse me, I need someone to work outside. Now, it could be working your vineyard, or it could be mowing your lawn. It's all the same thing. I need someone to do some work out there today. And the son says, no, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to. He thinks about it after. You know what, I really should do some work around the place today. And he goes out and takes care of it. He goes to the younger son and says, I need you to work in my vineyard. I need you to get some stuff done around here. Oh, of course, Dad. I'll get right to it. And it never gets done. And so it's obvious that Jesus has a lot more respect for the people who tell Dad off early and then think about it. He's using it obviously as a metaphor for the least likely suspects becoming closer to God when Jesus talks to them. And he puts it very bluntly. The tax collectors and the prostitutes that you put down for years are actually understanding God's will better than you are. You religious leaders, Pharisees, scribes, etc. Jesus was particularly critical, actually, of the clergy of his day. But I'd like to play a little bit with this notion of promises, with the 2 sons. One not so eager to go to work, but it turns out he does it in the end. And the other one, full of the right words. We all know people in this world like that. They tell you the right things, they make you feel like everything's going to be fine, and then something doesn't happen. Now, how on earth did I come up with this service? Well, it's a very personal story, and like I said, broken promises can run the gamut of something very, light and trivial, and all the way to the most heartbreaking stuff in the world. So I'll start with a story right in the middle. Friday. And like I said, this is not a poor me story, it just got me thinking about promises, about people you believe and things like that. And now I'm going to turn this conversation over to, what do we do when people don't live up to promises? Or do we not live up to promises? And why is that? And like I said, the conversation with you guys can go just about anywhere. So, my story though, Friday, for those of you that know me, you'll know I have a certain irrational love for my vehicle. It is not because it is rich or expensive. I do not have money for big expensive cars, but I love a good Jeep Wrangler with the top down and the wind flows through my hair. I have loved it for years, and I will do anything to keep that up. But I'm driving along, and my dog was in the car. My dog has no use of her back legs these days, so I can drag her up in there, and she enjoys a good ride in the car. And I'm coming back from this ride, and I'm at the very bottom of the driveway, and I'm about ready to go up, and I hear this crunch. And all of a sudden, I'm not sitting at the same angle I was before. And I go around, look, and it turns out my wheel had completely fallen off the vehicle. Yes, ew is what exactly. Actually, I said something much worse than that, but I can't repeat that in church. So the wheel literally is off somewhere else. And the car says, yeah. And it turns out the vehicle does need 4 wheels. 3 is not going to cut. 3 is not, they say 2 out of 3 ain't bad. 3 out of 4 is not good enough for this. So anyway, sitting there. And at first, I'm like, oh, it's pretty upsetting to look at this. So, but I'm like, be irrational, be reasonable. Call Cassie, get the dog back up to the house. Some people are lighting up fireworks nearby, and that dog hates fireworks. So get the dog out there. Then we'll take care of this. After all, Cassie says, don't worry. You're a AAA member, Greg. You would look in your wallet. I have a AAA card in here. Let's call the number on there and get this thing settled. So we do. And after a bit of a wait, we actually led to this app, load up all the detailed information. Good. And we will be there in 60 minutes. And they even have a little clock that ticks down. So we sit there and we look at our app, and we even have those wonderful little things that'll eventually have a GPS signal of the tow truck guy or gal, and it'll get closer to all of that. So 15 minutes go by, pretty soon we'll see this person. Half hour goes by. Any time now, we're going to see this little dot get closer and closer and closer. 45 minutes. Surely we should at least see a dot move. Well, maybe it's just not working today. The hour goes by, nothing. So we call the company. Sorry, we are AAA members. We are stuck here. We have 3 wheels, not 4. That's bad. We really would like someone to drag this car somewhere. We know exactly where to go, but we really do need a tow. Oh, I'm so sorry. We'll give them a call and get back to you right away. Half hour later, no one's called us. And again, so this goes on and on. Finally, I know it's going to come as a shock to you all. I'm not always the most patient person in the world. And there are moments where I can do something rather quick and irrational. So I simply grab the call, and I happen to know Snapper does towing around here. Pick up the phone, call Snappers. Guy, actually a wonderful woman, answers the phone right away, hands it over to her husband, and, oh yeah, I'll be right down. 10 minutes later, there he is with a truck, and I'm like, thank God. I'm like, by the way, did you ever hear from AAA? Oh, sorry, Cassie tells me no. As a matter of fact, I asked later that evening after we... I'm like, what if we had been actually stuck in an area we knew nothing about? And if I didn't happen to know a tow truck person, because I had lived in this town for 12 years, and if, I mean, what happens if no one just does anything? And that's where I'm going to talk to you about. I see this is a nice middle-of-the-road example. This is not a heartbreak example. It's not completely true. I mean, I am stuck in the middle of, I would like some help. But what happens in our lives when we are promised something? Could be something really serious, could be something trivial, could be something middle of the road, like AAA who promised if you get stuck and pay us a certain amount of money here and there, when the time comes, we're going to be there to help you out. And I'm not just pointing the finger. I've had not heartbreaking stuff, but I've had awkward moments stuff when I worked at Menards. Menards is very good about sort of replacing stuff, but we often, when I worked in appliances, I had to work with Whirlpool. And now that I'm no longer working, I can say Whirlpool is the devil. When it comes to, I can put that on the camera, and I don't think it's slanderous. Well, okay, say they're the devil is slanderous. I take that back. But there are definite real problems with, especially in our country area, of if an appliance goes wrong that you bought from Whirlpool, having them bring a qualified technician out if it's under warranty to take care of it. And I can go on forever. There were a lot of technical problems, and a lot of people were stuck in the middle. Having, a real problem, they paid for a warranty, and it just wasn't happening. So, and I felt really bad about that. So I've been on the other end of it. AAA, you're horrible people to me, and I've been working at a company whom in my opinion, didn't always do as well by their customers as they should. Promises. So, what do we do when we face a broken promise? How do we deal with that? I mean, because times I can lose my patience with things, but I as Christians, what's the best way to deal with a broken promise?
You should be understanding.
Should be. Yes, we should be understanding. I'm not always very understanding, so you're going to have to help me here, Mary Lou.
I get upset.
Okay, so, yeah.
Do what they're supposed to do. You can't make them, because the worse they get, the worse you get, and you don't really respond well to their talk.
Well, that's fair enough. And I'm not going to leave this conversation merely at the how do you deal with a company, because there's certain things you can or cannot do. Yeah. I'm also going to branch off into the more personal, I think, because obviously I don't want to leave this merely of how to deal with a company that isn't doing so well, their warranty. This is more than a customer service question. This is a big question of what do we do in our lives to help fulfill promises with others, and to what extent do we have to deal personally with unfulfilled promises, and what does that mean? In other words, how do we deal with that?
I feel bad when I can't fulfill something that I promised for somebody. And then I have to.
Yeah.
It does happen.
And how does that? Yeah, how does that come to be? I agree, by the way.
Life happens.
Exactly. And its nature, a promise is a prediction of the future.
Yes.
And sometimes we predict the future very badly.
Yeah.
Well, in my situation, sometimes I think I have an excuse because if Janina tells me to do something, promise to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Time I get out the door, I don't remember what it was. So I break the promise, and then she'll tell me an hour later, did you do that? And I said, well, okay, I'll do it right now. And then I'll do it because I get distracted when I go outside. And I see something else I got to do.
Oh, so if getting distracted by shiny things qualifies, then I'm with you. Because I can forget a request. Don't nod your head like that. See, Cassie is off the camera and nobody sees her back there. But she's got this down the road, if we get more advanced, I'll get a camera just on you because your body language says a lot over there. But anyway, so we can get a pass here with
that's that's a minor thing, but it's still something that's important to her, and it wasn't as important for me because I forgot it. Really, in a sense. But I didn't do it on purpose, it's just that my mind just wanders off some other place and I just didn't do the job of it.
I think part of that goes with the age.
That's what I meant, I got an excuse, that's what I was saying. That's my excuse.
But I can do it.
I'm older, I'm allowed to forget once in a while. Fair enough, fair enough.
I have learned that if I'm going to do something and it gets in my head, I have to do it when I'm thinking of it or I won't get it done.
Question for you then. If we can't predict the future, if we can get distracted by shiny things, if we are very fallible that way, why do we make promises at all? We all do it. Why do we?
So the saying will admit the promises are made to be broken.
That is a very cynical expression there, Dave. Yes, it is an expression. So yeah.
We want the person we're promising to feel better and feel reassured. That's why we make the promises. It's not for us, it's for the person we're talking to.
Okay.
Or you got your fingers crossed behind your back.
Yeah, you have a whole list here, Dave. I may come back to this later, but...
Aren't we like packed animals and we just live in bonds with each other, which are promises?
Tell me more. Yes, I agree, but tell me more. That's, yeah.
I just think that fundamentally we're packed animals.
What do you mean by a packed
We
animal?
like to be together.
Yes, we are. Okay, we are social creatures by nature. Correct. We are
Social
creatures. Yes.
And in order to be a social creature, we have to make bonds with each other.
Yeah.
And so some can call those promises.
Nice.
But
Yeah.
I think that there are personalities that we interact with that we know are pressure. So we say yes. Yes. To that personality, knowing we're never going to do it. Because it's the only way to get away from that personality.
In other words, if someone really wants something done that we don't have a particular concern about, we may, because of the nature of the loving nature of the relationship, say, oh yeah, I'll get to that, I promise. But then there's a little bit of dishonesty because we don't want to say things like, I couldn't care less about that particular project.
Right.
And and when I say I'll get to it, it's really low on my list. We sometimes, that's excellent.
There's cases where, certain case, like let's say you make a promise, and you get married, you promise to love that person till death do you part, well, that promise is broken about.
What happens? No, it's a good question actually. What is the purpose of a promise that is impossible that way?
I mean, you do it before God, you're promising before God that you're gonna love this person, until you die or whatever. Doesn't happen. It happened to you twice.
Yeah,
I
what?
made that promise.
How do we deal with that as Christians? I've asked couples to do wedding vows a lot of times. There's an inherent perfection in the way that we list those. We move to the love, honor, care for, that whole bit. And I mean, and we've gone many times too. Certainly we know of couples that got divorced, so that's an obvious. But there's other times too where things happen, and even in a marriage that stays together.
That's no fault of your own. It's something maybe got used or whatever. You're not gonna do that. It's just.
So yeah, as Christians, how do we look at that? How do we deal with that? I mean, why do we make marriage vows if half of them get broken on the obvious, and many others do in different ways that are more subtle? Yeah, how do we look at that? What's the point of making marriage vows if we can't really live up to them?
People make friendship vows too, that, I'll be your friend, whatever.
You're my buddy, I got your back.
Yeah. You break that promise. Don't do it.
I think it's an impossible high standard, but it's worth striving for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But everybody-
It's worth striving for.
It's worth striving for.
Everybody has a level or a threshold,
Yeah.
and their individual monitors and gauges. Everybody has that same desire.
Yeah.
I got two ideas going on at once here, but I really want to give some affirmation to one thing inherent in the Christian journey is to reach up to a standard above our own. Meaning we are looking at something larger than us, and in some people will look at a Christian and say, well, you're a hypocrite if you're doing this or that. But the truth is, we look at a set of standards above our own, and we're apt to call a Christian a hypocrite when we don't live up to our models, but no one really calls a young child admiring Kobe Bryant as a basketball player and going out and shooting hoops a hypocrite for never reaching that level. We have heroes. We have things we reach for, and we often don't get that back. Yeah. I was a runner through high school and college, and it was a wonderful movie that I watched, I think, at the very beginning of high school. It was a movie called Running Brave about a wonderful Native American descendant, Billy Mills, who ended up ran for the University of Kansas, and a lot of struggles he has as a Native American, but ended up kind of in a weird fluke winning the gold medal in the 10,000 meter at I think it was the Tokyo Olympics, years in the 1960s. But what was really neat was he got on the American team third on the American squad and ends up winning the gold medal. It's a very inspirational story. And as a child, I watched it over and over and over again. I ran all the time. But the truth is, at the end of the day, I was a pretty good Division III varsity runner, but certainly was never going to the Olympics. But as Christians, we do similar things. We have heroes well beyond what we can be, or at least models where beyond what we can be. Now, you mentioned some fascinating chat. I want to play with this. Certain individual standards and things you mentioned that. Tell me more about what you mean about that.
We all have our own barometer,
Yep.
and it may not match the other person's. So what I consider to be a high threshold is someone else way beyond what their need is.
And so sometimes we make promises we just because of our own threshold are unable to match that.
Well, I think what you had said, which is you make a promise, you're not going to sleep, you're not going to eat, you're not going to, until that's done,
Yeah.
you're not going to, it's going to eat away and eat away and eat away. And then, you know, I go to sometimes myself, I go, I have no intention of doing it. I say, absolutely. And I walk away and I go have a sandwich.
I love that. That's very honest. And I think there are some issues where what is perceived as a promise is often polite too. In other words, some people, and I'm in this category, I am too polite for my own good. Sometimes I cannot say to a friend, that's a dumb idea. I have no intention of ever wanting to do that again on myself. Oh, that'd be a great thing to do someday. Or, oh, sure, we'll get to that. And they can perceive it as a promise.
Yeah.
And in the back of my mind, I'm just being polite.
Well, like Chaz there, you know, when I was younger, I wasn't a promise, but he would ask me to do things. And I'd say, okay, I'll do that. Now I'm just
You get more blunt.
you need more blunt.
You did it when you said you do it, though.
Yeah, that's what I mean, but now I don't want to make no promise, I'll just say no. I don't want to do that.
And I think, too, that we all do have our heroes. And our heroes have different barometers. Like, you know, there's heroes that are Christians that are much more, I don't like to use the word holy. I just think that they live by our standards and they're heroes to each of us.
That's what makes them a hero to a point, is that they're doing something that to us seems next to impossible, so we still admire it.
But then each of us, I know I do, my humble opinion, I have my rationale that supports whatever decision I'm making in that moment. It may not be the right decision, but I rationalize it to the point where it is right.
No, and that, yes, you can. Oh, that's deep. Because no, it reminded me.
Not coming to dinner because.
Well, I think that we do have to strive to not make promises, is that we cannot.
You feel guilty if you don't keep.
You know,
Yeah, but why do it?
we want to strive to in our lives do that. I think that as I'm older, that I make less promises.
So that
It's
your-
easier to say no, isn't it?
Yes.
So that the reputation that you preserved maintains this reputation that whatever promise you make, you repeat.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm more reluctant to make promises now. And I'm, like when we were talking about that whole picture thing that you said I should do.
Should.
I know, and
No.
it's not gonna happen. I know what's gonna happen. I wanna walk away.
Right.
Well, it's very interesting. In the parable, it is the older son who's more blunt. Ah, Dad, I don't want to do that. And he ends up, going out to the end. Jesus seems to admire that quality more than the younger son, who was, oh, sure, Dad, I'll get right to that. And he has no intention. He's just got surfing words. And so,
That situation happens every day where somebody asks me to do something and I will say, no, I'll do it. Then I'll sit and think about it a while and I will do it. Because
Yeah, if you
it
know.
isn't, I mean, it's not, you want people to,
Your reputation starts to.
yeah, you want to keep up your reputation, you don't want to feel like, well, you're a terrible person or anything, you want to be liked, so you do that, you think that that's going to feel that person feel better, it's ridiculous, whatever you said you weren't going to do. You change your thoughts.
you definitely change your mind. But it seems like, and Jesus reflects this more than once, because Jesus has this philosophy where if you start out kind of low, you can raise up to it. You say, I don't want to do that, and I can. He has a wonderful thing about when you go to there's a wonderful line from Jesus where you go to a dinner, a fancy dinner. He goes, don't sit at the place of honor, go to the humble place. Because if you're wrong, the guy's going to say, oh no, you're very important. Come sit at this important spot. The last thing you want is to be at and no, you really need to move back there. And it was kind of like and this parable is somewhat similar. Is if you start out saying, I don't know if I can do this, I don't really want to, and then you know where to go but better. As opposed to, saying what people want to hear, but then disappointing in the long run.
It's a constant adjustment.
Yeah.
I think it is. And it's a constant question for my own Christianity.
Yeah.
Like, where am I?
Yeah.
Constant.
So in the story, was he comparing the religious people of the day as the one that just talked the talk but had no intention.
In the parable, the tax collectors and prostitutes were the older son who said, I have no intention of doing it, and I have no intention of working your field. And said, and because he equates tax collectors to being people, when you ask them, oh no, I'm not religious, this is a bunch of crap. And it turns out they're doing loving, kind things. The younger son, the one who's saying what dad wants to hear, he equates to the clergy of his day. They talk religion, they dress religiously, they give an outward appearance that they are holy people, but if you get to know them and really analyze their character, they're mean, rotten, nasty folks.
Oh, we know those people.
Oh my God.
I don't know if you're reliving a bad memory or if you're just agreeing with it.
Well, I have my own situation where I really want to be a part of this really big Christian church because I'm really drawn to worship and praise. Yeah. It is mesmerizing, I think, is a better answer. Just there's this energy that's back and forth between the band and the congregation, and the more people, the more energy. It's almost like a concert.
Yes.
Well, it's all for Christ. And then you go out into the courtyard.
If I could tell a story about something similar, I actually, I used to bowl a lot, and when I was in Kansas City, one thing I did to kind of clear my head was go to the bowling alley when no one else was there, like on an afternoon, and just shoot a little bit, and kind of cleared my head. I bumped into someone else there who was also a minister, African-American minister, and our complaints were totally different. I was at a mostly older white church that felt like it was kind of dying less people and things like that, and that was its ethos. That's what bothered me most. That's how they looked at themselves. But he had a very different issue. His issue was, and if I could sum it up, I'm tired of going to services where everyone walks in, they have their best outfits on, they're waving their hands, they're praising God, they're falling out in the spirit. There's all this excitement, and then I no sooner get to the parking lot and they're yelling at someone because they're parked a little over the line. And I think, and that was a big deal for him. Meaning, my issue was, you guys all show up to church and you act like, you don't even want to be here. His issue was, you all show up to church, you act like the greatest people in the world, and you can't even get to the parking lot without forgetting everything you learned 10 minutes ago in church. That was his perspective on that. Yeah. So I don't know what's better or worse, but I remember thinking, wow, your world's different than mine, and thinking that's a neat conversation.
And in that moment, you had to shift and think about your own Christianity. Where are you?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what I mean. We're constantly thinking about it, even if we're not thinking about it.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Well, and along with that, these groups of people that are praising the Lord with so much show and so much feeling, and then when you get out of the parking lot, how you're exposing yourself. If you say, I don't agree with you about, like banning gays from your church. You're exposing yourself. You don't want to do that.
It's also harder.
Yeah.
That is hard.
Well, it's harder in other words. Yeah, if at a service where, and I've been in some of them, they're really fun, where the music's flowing, you feel this larger than life in terms of your faith. But and that faith can be neat because you experience a sort of what we call a mountaintop experience type of thing. But eventually you do have to go to work on Monday and deal with things much less inspirational. And that can be part of the struggle as well. But that relates to also promises as well. Because you go there and you think to yourself, oh, I can do all these things for God, and I promise, inside your heart, I promise to be a better person, I promise to do this, that. But you're right, come Monday, you're going to have to go and sit to an office desk or whatever, and those things that challenged you originally will still be there.
Well, I'm talking about in the parking lot, the same people you were worshiping with.
Yes. Yeah. I was just giving a little more time to get to Monday. But you're right. It may be 10 minutes after the service is done. You're in the parking lot. Now you're angry at someone about the way they park. Yes.
Or the people you went to church with, and then,
Or being judged for wearing shorts.
or they leave church and then yell at the waiter.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
But what were you thinking of? You got an idea. I didn't
talking and singing about love, but when they come out, the love is gone.
Oh, I got you. Oh no, Nina's hitting on something much bigger. I want to play with this for a while. So you go there and you experience this mountaintop experience. You have about love and care, and then as soon as you leave, you're defining your own Christianity as a way you or I would think of as exclusionary, hateful, you don't belong here.
Pharisee judgment.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
I feel that way about the Catholic Church. I mean, I was really a joyful little Catholic.
Mhm.
And when I found out what they really are, I mean, I don't know how if they could ever square away with me. They aren't even trying.
Yeah,
You are just supposed to conform to them.
Yeah, and it's not right.
The best quote I ever heard, and it came to me from a Catholic friend, so I can say this. A Catholic friend, whoa, this goes way back to my divinity school days. Went to a conference. He was Catholic at the time. He later became UCC. But anyway, there was a speaker and talked about various attitudes and sexuality in the Catholic Church. And he asked the question, excuse me, do you think the Catholic Church will ever deal well and effectively with homosexuality? And the man laughed and said, excuse me, but the Catholic Church does not deal particularly well with heterosexuality. It's a quote that stays with me to this day. I've always found that very clever. But, so you are not the only one in that particular boat.
Or sex before marriage.
Well, that's, yeah, yeah.
Or what is it, or divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Or priests marrying, or
Oh, that's, well, that in Christianity.
Paying to get into heaven or get your annulment or get your, as long as you cough up the money.
Yeah.
We talked about that last week. Yeah, that came,
That's
yeah.
wrong, though.
and there's still churches out there where women, you can't cut your hair, you can't wear gold, you can't dance, you can't
Play
drink.
cards.
And the same people that are
Stupid
worshiping
things like that.
are judging,
Yes, because the people who do it,
are righteous.
that act that way, and they look down on you like you are something under their shoes.
I've gotten looks for the clothes I wear in the church.
Why?
I don't know, but people are doing it, not me.
No, and it's fair. I mean, I once got talking to you about the length of my hair.
That's another thing.
And I'm like, there's no way. I mean, you could run it's a biblical perspective on hair length. It's just a matter of, there are certain times where long hair was considered good and it's being praised in the Bible. It's just, trust me, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
Biblically speaking, it cannot matter. And whatever you see in the Bible is just the fashion of the day.
And that's all broken promises.
Yeah.
But it is.
Because you promise to be a good Christian.
The persona you're trying to portray is a promise.
Yeah. But by whose good book?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's not only individuals like we who struggle with broken promises. An institution can inherently be a broken promise.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you walk in the door, and there's a wonderful band playing, and they talk over and over again about no matter where you are, about what you've done, Jesus loves you. Yeah, and it's beautiful until you realize that there's fine print, for lack of a better word. And it takes different forms in different churches, but I've definitely been there. I thought, oh my God, this is beautiful, the stuff you're talking about. And yeah, we gotta talk to you about your hair. Oh yeah, we gotta talk, yeah. And that, yeah.
And you're sitting right next to the cheating husband that was in the same recovery group that you just attended the night before. And they're like, you're like, are you
I went into a situation where I belonged to a church, and I was on the board, in charge of maintenance and stuff. And we would have this round table prayer, and everybody would, all of a sudden they would say something, a prayer or something or whatever, thank you for this and thank you for that. And I felt that this was between me and God. I don't want to speak to God. I don't want to, like I was putting on a show, I felt like. And the minister told me, he said, you gotta talk more. You're not speaking up enough. And I really felt disappointed that I don't think I want to belong to this person. I criticized him even.
No.
I because I'm not doing what they think I'm supposed to do, you know?
They want you to be honest. They want you to be honest in a certain way. I went to a similar situation. I went to a church, just sort of visiting for a while. They went through this, they had someone come in and teach us how to speak in tongues. And I was profoundly uncomfortable with that notion.
Teaching you how to speak in tongues.
Yes. Yes, it was a, Cassie, back me up.
I'm backing you up.
All right. Essentially, it was a non-denominational church, and they had different sort of themes going on. They had a guest preacher come in to teach us how to speak in tongues. And talked about it at great length, and then it was our turn to do it. And left and right people were, and I felt not called to do so. For lack of a better word, I was profoundly uncomfortable. And all lined up in a line, each put their hand on their head, and each one in front of me was speaking, and I just was like, no. And he looks, and it was clearly one of the most awkward moments I can ever remember. He looked at me, and it was like, I hope God hasn't turned, whatever it was. So I said something, well, and I just left. I was like,
Sounds like a performance, not an authentic
that's,
moment.
well,
Yeah,
very,
that's what I felt like,
Yeah.
this was a performance.
but very interesting enough, Jesus talks about that often. His biggest criticism of it is he actually mentions once the problem with you religious leaders that you always walk around in robes, but you are, but inside you are wicked and just mean. And he once compared it to a glass that's only clean on the outside. He goes, you look really pretty, but go on the inside. And so there are, there's an inherent broken promise in a church that kind of gets you in the door by talking about the love of all people and things like that, but then you learn about certain rules and certain expectations. I mean, the truth is, that was your expression, or lack thereof, and yeah.
You know, I think for me, and when it comes to broken promises, I feel more confidence, and I feel more that I'm going to keep, that I'm going to stick to my word, or that I'm going to realign with Christ when I keep Christ in my world every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I get, you know, church once a week, church when I eat out there. I used to do the Bible every day, and it was a different life I was living. And when it's slipped, it's so easy to forget. But do you feel that when Jesus was in my life every day, I looked at my life every day, all the time, in a different set of principles.
And so, it's interesting, we kind of moved from the idea of if someone breaks a promise to you to also the sort of notion of religion being something different on the surface. Almost like a promise. You come here, you receive forgiveness and love and care, but sometimes you find it's not so much so. And yeah, and so it goes back and forth for me. Sometimes we strive for things we can't reach. And other times it just feels like someone broke a promise to you. So I'm not really sure where I can draw that line yet.
Because you just can't complete that promise. You're not qualified to do whatever that promise was. It's more than what they expect of you. You still make that promise. You never fulfill it because you know yourself you're not going to be able to do it.
I'm curious if I may ask you that. So with the church that asked you to speak up more in prayer as a public joy, what did you end up doing with that? Because this is part of broken promises is also not being able to tell either other people or the world, no, I can't do that.
Well, see, I'm not a very good speaker. So you know what I started doing? I had a little notes I had down here of things I was going to say.
Yep.
You know, because I'm just not a person that out of the blue says something. You know?
Yeah.
I want to have some kind of idea, a little note there what I'm going to say. You know? Not really hiding that, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of, I was cheating, you know.
Right. Flip notes into the test.
Yes.
Cheating, yeah.
You got a little
Attempt
cheat
here.
sheet there. But no, this you're on to something though, because when we can't admit our own weakness, then we become that sort of liar that breaks promises. Meaning, you know, a strong person can say in that situation, I don't feel comfortable doing it. Maybe it's my lack of faith, or maybe I just express it differently, whatever. But while other people would find a way to just make that work, and I mean that in a bad way, meaning when that person came in to teach us how to speak in tongues, almost everyone around me was instantly speaking in tongues. And I couldn't help but think, none of you had the guts to say, you know what, I'm just not feeling it today.
Why?
And then part of that is like a broken promise. It's saying one thing, but ending up doing another. Because we went back to that service a couple times, they never spoke in tongues after that.
No.
They came in that 1 week, they were taught to do it, they did it, and then it was over. And I'm like, I don't know much about speaking, but I know that's not the point. And I know that you all promised to speak in tongues that week because you just didn't have the guts to say, I'm not comfortable.
Or sometimes you just gotta check a box.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, it felt, in that particular...
I've attended that class.
I got that credit. It's like college, right? I have no intention of doing math ever again, but I got through Calculus 101. You required, thank you. But
Every religion has their own prereqs to get into heaven.
I just had the feeling that in my own mind that they all thought that I was below that.
Yeah.
That I wasn't spiritual enough and outspoken. It's just not me. I'm a quiet person anyway in the first place, but I'm not good with words, so I just felt that the minister in the group there, why isn't he saying anything? I always felt bad that we did. I dreaded doing it. I didn't want to even be a part of it.
I try to limit my input of a callous society from social influence, because it does tend to harden me. It makes me rationalize that what the promises I'm going to be making.
I think a part of it that I never anticipated the conversation going in, the part of it is sort of following the herd. You were talking about the social animal, there's following the crowd, and you can follow a crowd to the point where you're making promises that you really inside your heart don't want to keep. And then you know, and now then you're the one making the broken promise.
That's so uncomfortable.
Yeah, very much so. But on the other hand, if you don't mind if I use your example, at that point you're either left continuing to put yourself in a situation where you're trying to become someone you're not, and that's the road to a broken promise, or have the strength to just leave it all together and just say, I'm not like this.
You know what? That's exactly right. That's exactly right about promises when you're getting older, is that you want to be authentic and you want to be honest. And so if people are trying to get you to do something that you know you're not going to do, you don't want to be with them. Because that's how they're going to treat you. So you don't.
But you're also living in a battle of trying to stay in
The herd.
Or no, not in the herd, but for the person that
Isolating yourself. Not isolating yourself.
your hero. You're trying to push yourself to the level.
Yes, it is. It is a dichotomy. Is that the right word? Of feelings. You
have a hero that you're looking at, and you want to be like that person.
Right.
But when you're not, to what extent are you just striving for something better, and to what extent are you just being a phony?
Right, but there's a level that you have to stretch yourself, of course.
Yeah.
Things that are uncomfortable that you are doing.
Yeah. And so the $1 million question is that thing they're pushing you towards sort of making you better, or is it just not you? I'm sorry, I'm trying to picture Dave at a meeting where everyone wants you to pray extemporaneously. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, your inability to pray extemporaneously is not making you a better. You can be a great Christian and not be particularly comfortable praying out loud in public. But if you have a crowd around you who that's the way you get close to God, you've really got one of two choices. You can be honest with them, or you walk a slippery slope towards being a phony as well. Or are you just trying to reach a level higher? I guess the question comes constant. Yeah, I think the $1 million question is that a real goal that you want to reach towards, or are you just trying to fit in with something that may not work for you? Now I'm really putting myself for just a moment in Dave's shoes there, and just kind of asking, because at that point, I don't think him pushing teaching himself to pray extemporaneously makes him a better Christian. That's my class.
Because sometimes it's easier to fit into and get to the car. And then you can dash away and you're done.
Oh yeah, no, but that's a long-term thing. I mean, do you get to the car and never come back, or do you have to come back for the next stage?
I mean, it come real easy for them, because, you know, they just thought it was like open up and set.
Well, you don't know that, but.
And,
Or they were practiced at it. Either you came naturally or they were practiced. You sit in a room where everyone's doing something and you're not comfortable with it.
I wasn't comfortable with it at all. I don't want to be here, you know.
Or
I
they're,
don't have to prove to anybody that
They-
God is my savior. You know.
yeah, they succumb to mimicking their social group to stay part of that social group.
I think that's what happened in that class.
Yeah, you mimic.
Yes, no, there was a lot of that. And that was the beginning of the end for us in that particular church. Actually, the nail in the coffin was the juggler.
Yes, the juggler did do it.
And one was a juggler who basically had a juggling act, which was fine, except he threw in, oh, look, you can do anything if you believe enough that you do all the juggling stuff. I'm like, no, you're just a juggler, dude. I'm going home. But that was but also part of it in my mind was that. It was, the more you have to live up to something, and if it pushes you to be dishonest, the more that's that slippery slope to promises you either can't keep or have no intention of keeping or becoming, because, and I felt that was the road down that way in that place was just kind of a little dishonesty here and there. Next thing you know, I'm the one making promises I have no intention of keeping, and at that point, I might as well be the younger son of the parable. That's like, sure, Dad, I'm going, and then
Yeah, I didn't make no promise to the pastor and say, well, I'll try to talk more, or I'll talk more. I didn't make any kind of promise.
No, that's good. That's a lot of strength on your part. Other people would have. I mean, it's pressure.
I knew that wasn't me. Why should I make a promise when I got nothing?
Yeah, but you did. You didn't say it, but you're holding a paper and you made a promise to yourself.
Yeah, that I would try to do it.
And not only that, here you are now talking.
Oh my gosh!
Don't point that out.
That's an aha moment, Mr. Man. You are actually speaking in public and you stretched.
Yeah, but I was afraid I was going to say something that I'll get criticized.
But you're not afraid here.
No, I'm not. No, nobody criticized me.
But it took you taking an action that was uncomfortable so that you could actually do it.
Or finding an environment where you're less uncomfortable. I'm going at it both ways here. In other words, because I've actually, in that particular church situation, I felt quiet, reserved, check the box and get me out of here. But, yeah. Well, I'm glad you're talking to me. You're fascinating.
Yes.
As far as I'm concerned, you make some great points as far as I'm concerned. So I'm glad. All right. Other last thoughts on this? This has been a great conversation. I've gone a little over time, but I don't care. I'm like Netflix. We can make the show as long as we want. We don't have to be out by a certain time. So. But other last thoughts on broken promise? And again, you've surprised me with this. In part, I anticipated more of a conversation about other times when people broke promises to you. But we've actually led into series of events where we can be the one who ends up breaking the promise, or just not being ourselves, which leads to that broken promise. Fascinating point, gang. I never thought it would go that way, but I appreciate it. That's awesome.
Okay, my husband promised to show me the ocean before I die.
Yes.
I never believed it.
Okay. Now, why did he promise to show you the ocean?
Because I said I wanted to see an ocean.
But here is the inevitable conundrum, because I know your husband well enough to be a little bit. So you say, I want to see the ocean before I die. He loves you. He wants to make you happy.
Yeah.
And I know he's good. So I'm going to classify yours as a pretty good marriage.
Yes.
Not perfect, but darn good. In a world where 50% of marriages end up in divorce and some others end up perfectly miserable, I've come to the conclusion that Brad is an infallible person who loves you very much.
Okay.
So he's got two choices. Yes, honey, honey, I promise I will show you the ocean. Honey, I have no care in the world whether I ever see the ocean.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't really.
I've noticed,
He
because if he
does.
cared, he probably would have been there by now. If he really thought oceans were wonderful, he probably, yeah. But right now, it's my wife, whom I love, wants to see the ocean. What do you tell her?
He shut me up.
Why do you have day-to-day experience with somebody you say, I
That's the,
Yeah.
yes!
There's your,
Yes, that's, you're sort of
now you're
implying.
creating something that's not in support of your marriage.
Mhm.
Now there's this, well, I don't care about how you do your socks.
No, and I honestly believe.
Right? I
Yeah.
There was 5 of us children.
Mhm.
2 are divorced. 1 cheated on, oh, they both cheated on each other, but
They
they're.
took a break, yeah.
But no, they didn't take a break.
That was my tongue in cheek. Yeah, they both kind of took a break. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, unofficially.
One's never been married.
Mhm.
Compared to all this other stuff, my marriage is perfect.
And I will state this openly on camera that in the grand scheme of things, you have a marriage to a fallible human being who does a great job in the big picture. Yeah, that he loves you and cares for you, but probably at the end of the day does not care about the ocean the way you do.
But he does care about pleasing his wife.
He
Yes.
does.
Yes.
And it's not just looks. So there are certain things that he does that I've known that he,
Okay, he has stepped out of his comfort zone. He doesn't like going away. He's taken me down, and my parents down to Kansas, Dodge, Kansas, to see my aunt and uncle with my father, his brother, twice. And he would rather stay home and watch TV.
and yeah, so
But he did enjoy himself while we were there.
Sure.
but that's part of
He was
the.
out of his comfort zone.
Yeah, he did go out of his comfort zone, yes.
So, but I think it's a fascinating point that sometimes we aren't evil when we break promises.
No.
We're just trying.
Yes.
You mentioned before we turned the cameras on and everything, you mentioned about promises to children.
Yes, children never forget the promises you make. And so you never tell them, okay, if you do this, I promise you can do that.
Not a good thing.
No.
But it's not done, yeah, but you get there not by an evil act, you get there with good intentions,
Yeah,
but.
but they remember that. They never forget a promise, do they?
No. I was
And
15.
you have to,
I was 15. My dad asked me, which would you rather have, braces or a car? Because I'd been complaining about my crooked teeth since I was a child.
yeah.
And I told him, I want braces. I got a 20-year-old Honda.
Well, that's not even a good deal at all.
Don't ask them, yeah, but that's, yeah.
That's just like making a promise to get what you want. And you're telling them, I'll do this, and if you do this, I'll promise to do that. So you're trying to actually, in a way, you're trying to get them to do what you want to do.
Isn't that
Yeah.
marriage?
And they're gonna give them a reward for it. I'll promise
But
I'll
the
take
thing
you ice
is-
cream or something or whatever.
Yeah, but if something else happens in between then, and you don't get to do that with them, then they go, well, what happened to mine? I did what you wanted, so where's mine?
Yeah, I know, yeah.
And then you go,
Works
well,
both
I
ways.
can't, yeah,
That's a teacher-student thing,
yeah,
even though you're a parent.
yeah. But so
Yes, very
then
much
you
so.
learn to negotiate it different. If they will say, if I do this, we promise I can do that, and I go, we'll see what happens.
Oh, okay, yeah, so you're not saying yes to it.
Yes, but if I can make it happen for them, I like that. I like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there was never an evil intent. It can be
Yeah.
hurtful, but it's not an evil intent. You really want. I think in your case, by the way, I think your dad threw the car out there, assuming any teenager in their right mind would want a car long before braces. And I know your dad a little. My guess is he was profoundly surprised at your answer.
Yeah, he didn't know me very well. Apparently.
Well, Cora was the same way. She wanted them braces. She did everything she could because she had trouble eating. And now her teeth are beautiful.
I got him when I turned 30.
Oh, did you get some Invisalign things?
No, it was before those were invented. I had the metal hardware,
Yeah.
Did you?
and I was so proud,
See, now,
so proud.
Kylie got the stuff, you take the
Yep.
mold and send it
Yep.
to them,
Yeah.
and they come in the mail. Every so often you get a new set of them.
Nope, Cassie
And
looked
she-
like a teenager in her 30s. It was
I got carded for cigarettes when I was 30, and I quit smoking since. But yeah, I was pretty proud.
But Kylie
Mhm.
is happy with her face.
Yep. It made a big difference.
Alright, gang, it's been fun. Thank you. It's been awesome, but I'm gonna have to move on here. Alright, last thoughts real quick. It's neat. You guys led this in a conversation I never would have thought. For starters, talk a little bit about when we deal with broken promises, but we talked about what happens that makes us break promises, which, thank you, I appreciate that. That was really fascinating. And even institutions like churches can feel like a broken promise if you go in and you get this mountaintop moment and you just can't live up to it. Other times, we are just nice, normal people who are trying, and our ability to predict the future is limited.
Yes.
So, sneaks up. Thanks, gang.
See, that's what Cassie belongs to, is that. What?
No, I get, and
That it's a feel-good church is what it is.
It's hypnotic. The music and the people and the
There's
energy
great
is
stuff to it.
hypnotic. Yeah.
It's a totally.
but it's wrong.
But I didn't feel comfortable there.
Yeah, and it's a style thing.
You gotta be
Churches
up
are
and
styles,
going.
all different sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you are.
Oh, the waving hands thing. Me waving my hands in the air, I respect it. It's all, while people are singing, but I feel like you praying. Like I feel, that praying out loud thing. Like, if I have to do it, I will. But never quite felt right. And I don't know
No.
why.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
not.
see, if I know somebody personally,
Yeah.
like Janina, she'll do that.
Yeah, no, it's
And
cool.
I know her,
I
I know
watch
she's
it.
genuine, she's pretty mean to
No,
them.
I get that.
Yeah.
She's got her hands up to God, and she's just like praying,
Yeah.
For other people that don't know her, look at her, look at she's, they maybe look at it differently.
No, I think it's awesome seeing people do it. My only comment was, when I was in that crowd, I don't know why, it just didn't feel natural to me. And I didn't know whether I'd ever get used to it, or whether, like I said, I was raised a Methodist boy. And it just was a different world. And for me, faith was always more cerebral. But no, it's not a comment in any way, shape, or form. But it reminds me of you. Okay, I gotta say something in this prayer. Here we go. And I'm like, it's kind of, yeah.
Well,
And
they couldn't see me because they all were bowing their heads, so.
that's good. You got
Wait a minute.
that's,
Everyone bow.
yeah.
I mean, I was trying my hardest, what they wanted me to do.
Yeah.
I still wasn't comfortable with it. Not
We're gonna
that
give you an A, David. You're gonna
Give him an A for effort on that one. Excellent. All right, thanks so much, gang. If you're comfortable, stand up. Our last song is As We Go. I'm really fond of this, so let me cue this thing up. Stand the music and all that. Another song you'll pick up real quick here. As we go, may your spirit go before us. As we go, may we follow where you lead. May we live what we have learned, share the message we have heard, and be a light unto the world as we go. As we go, may your spirit go before us. As we go, may we follow where you lead. May we live what we have learned, share the message we have heard, and be a light unto the world as we go. And remember always, we are listening. Any topics you want for future services, please let me know. We are always looking for the next great topic. As we go, may your spirit go